Okay, this week I want to take a spin on how to get out of that mental prison that AA basically puts you in and everything. So, because with the AA program, there is no such thing as progression. There's no getting better. There is no moving on with your life because the way it's set up, it's all about bringing you into AA and not having you move out of AA because now, and this has happened to me where, if you bring up, hey, look, if the AA program doesn't work for me, are there other options out there? The blowback you're going to get is you're sternly, fuck no, you're in denial. You need to get this program. Otherwise, at the very worst, you're going to be told the only other options are jails, institutions, or death. Now, in my area, it was kind of driven home. Not necessarily come out like if you leave you're going to drink again. It's implied that if you leave, hey, you're going to drink again, and this is why you need to stay in AA. And here it has been over 8 years since I've left, and I haven't gone back to drinking or anything. So there's a big lie right there. So of course then they do the mental gymnastics on oh hey, you never were a true alcoholic. Okay, well, if you look into the DSM, there really is no such thing as an alcoholic. There are things like alcohol abuse and labeled as alcohol use disorder, and there's a spectrum of severity from mild, maybe you're maybe a binge drinker 2 or 3 times a year, or a very mild case in certain situations and everything that kind of sets you off to become a binge drinker. Moderate, okay, maybe you're a binge drinker on the weekends or something, or I can remember this almost 20 years ago when I was working at Sam's Club, the local one. There was one coworker that was working in the produce section. Every payday, we'd get paid every 2 weeks, so every payday that he'd get, he would basically miss out on that a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and go basically on a drinking binge and everything. So that'd be kind of something maybe moderate to a severe. I'll stick with moderate for a second. Moderate would probably be someone who's maybe getting drunk someone like me who's getting drunk every day, but isn't necessarily physically dependent on it yet. Someone who has a severe case in the spectrum might be someone who gets to the point where they're physically dependent on alcohol or maybe the drug that they're abusing or whatever. But in AA, they use the term of alcoholic, which they can define and kind of take that goalpost and move around. Like I said, you weren't necessarily a true alcoholic unless you basically delve right deep into the AA program. Which, if you take a step back and and listen to what I explained with the, in a sense, severity and getting into the DSM, it really isn't necessarily such a thing as an alcoholic. There's alcohol abuse, alcohol use disorder, something that you can overcome. And of course, with it being a mental illness or a mental disorder, something you are going to need medical treatment for, which AA isn't. So now, where it traps you in is that, like I said, you have to do the program. It's these so-called suggestions, oh, you get yourself a sponsor, you do the 12 steps, you read the big book, you do all the service work, you get yourself a home group, you get then once you get the whole message, and then you go out and start taking the message to the others and everything, to start saving them and everything. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, because another thing is, if you brought up oh hey, look, I never took any of these suggestions, and I'm completely fine, I never did the steps, I never got myself a sponsor, I never read the big book or did this or did that, and if you shared that in a meeting, then the next 5 to 10 people would all around the room kind of in a sly way attack you, oh yeah, in a sly way of attacking you, saying, yeah, you're just full of bullshit and everything. So the way the AA is a mental prison is that it gets you sucked into the little like a neat little box, like this is the only way, and like that, this is like you have to do it this way, or you're going to drink again if you don't. And instead of, oh hey look, okay, so the well, instead of addressing the concerns, like, okay, what's your concerns of this program? Oh, it's too religious for you. Okay, here's another like alternative for you. Okay, here's a smart recovery. Here's like uh, something that's based in science and psychology and everything. Here's an alternative for you, that so that way you can actually overcome your alcohol abuse or your drug abuse or your mental disorder, for that like a use disorder. No, you don't hear that. It's like it's final. This is it, and this is all there is to it. And like if you can't if you can't get this, well then there's no getting better from it, because there are no alternatives and everything. So you using the BITE method, the behavior, information, thought, and emotion, to basically like classify a cult. Like you have to start behaving like us. Otherwise, you're never going to overcome your alcohol abuse. You have to the information. Again, all of the information you ever need is right in the first 164 pages of the big book. Disregard all the like scientific and psychological evidence that we've amassed over the past like 90 years or so, ever since like AA first came about and everything. Disregard all that information. You don't need that. Thoughts, well, hey, you're gonna have to start thinking like us, using those like thought stopping one line cliches that you really can't necessarily argue against in any objective or intellectual way. And emotions, they can will sit there and control your emotions. Again, hey look, this is the only option that you have, because like either they'll use like the only other options you have like are jails, institutions, or death and everything. So like they like attach emotions like, hey look, you need to get this, or you're going to die, or you're going to end up in an institution, or you're going to quite possibly end up in jail. Or in the case in my area, hey look, if you leave this program, you're going to drink and everything. So like the question though with like the saying stuff like oh, you want to drink again if you leave and everything. Why are the retention rates so low in AA? So I'm going to ask that question, that maybe people can start like pondering it and start looking into like stuff. And like myself, like I always say that I was in AA 2 years too long, because after about 3 or 4 months, when I started getting through that like that brain, like the alcohol induced brain fog was starting to clear, and I was able to start thinking clearly and more like be able to like more articulate and organize my thoughts and emotions and everything better. I start to being like, huh, something that 2 plus 2 does not equal 5. So then I came across like the orange papers and blame denial. Oh, hey, look, okay. So then I started asking questions, and like of course, one of the questions like that, like some of the numbers that like blame denial put out was like 70 to 75% of people basically overcome their alcohol abuse on their own. So I posted a question, hey, of the 70 to 75% of people that overcome their alcohol abuse by themselves, would an AA group let them chair a meeting? One of them was like completely went over right over his head, and was like, oh, hey, look, the only requirement for membership in AA is decided to stop quitting. They've already quit drinking, so yeah. And then it's pretty much after about 4 or 5 months, I probably could have like really got on with my life. Now, this is why I say, like, if I had known about the alternatives in the get-go, I would never have joined AA, and I would have probably been in like a lot better position a lot quicker if I like had actually known about the alternatives from the get-go. And then of course, like after like 8 months or so, like I was like working like at least a couple part-time jobs, and like working probably like 40, at least 45, 50 hours a week. It kind of like finagling my schedule, and oh, I still got to go to meetings because I don't want to drink again and everything. And of course, my sponsor ends up texting me like, hey, look, I haven't seen you and everything, and like, hey, you drinking again? It's like that really turned me off, which was like another catalyst. Like, wait, here I am working on getting my life in order, and like you're texting me to kind of like say I'm drinking again because like I'm busy getting my life in order. So it's kind of like No, and then of course, like about a month or two later, I actually came across the Quackaholics Anonymous channel, and of course, like he's still at it, like basically attacking the literature and attacking the culture, and be like, hey, look, this is total bullshit and everything. And so all that stuff kind of like eventually helped me to be able to move on. Now, of course, with the stuff that did help me move on, I don't think like I might not necessarily have had to need to be able to use to move on again if I had found the alternatives from the get-go. So that's the kind of like the prison, and especially the mental prison. Like you have to start behaving and thinking and like uh, using your emotions and information all tied into this one organization. So that's why they trap you in there, because again, like if people were able to get better and move on with their lives, and in a sense leave AA would probably be the way of the dodo bird, and we'd probably have been able to replace it with something much better, with a better success rate. So now, if you want to go back and look at my previous videos where I talked about the Sinclair method, smart recovery, the Phoenix program, tying those all in together and everything, so that pretty much encapsulates like what I'm talking about in this video. Like, hey, look, don't go into AA, go into those alternatives that actually will work for you and not get you into that prison of staying stuck in the same program. You want to stay in college for your whole life and not moving forward to get a job. Like, oh, look, I'm going to get a PhD in physics, and then I'm going to keep going to college, and because hey, look, I still need to keep going to college because there's no graduating there. Like I can't. I gotta stay in college and everything. No, you go to college and get the PhD in physics to maybe be working at like a nuclear plant or something. You go to college to get like a degree to be able to move on with your life. With AA, there is no such thing as moving on with your life, because you have to stay stuck in our program, or you're, like I said, you're going to drink again. So it's your choice. Would you rather stay stuck in a program that's going to keep you trapped and not moving forward with your life, or are you going to get into the alternatives that I've talked about before and actually be able to move forward with your life? In my opinion, the choice is easier. I'd rather take a solution that's going to let me get my life in order and be able to move on to bigger and better things.